All right, welcome back. We are out of executive session, set to resume the public portion of our January 4th meeting, first meeting of the year of 2023. Happy New Year, everyone who is with us and those who are watching online. Now is the time to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Trustee Kavanaugh.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, just reminding everyone of the emergency evacuation locations directly to the back of the room and also to my right, your left. In the event of an emergency, please leave in an orderly fashion through these exits. This is a smoke-free school district. Smoking is not permitted in the building or anywhere on the school grounds. This is also a hate-free and bully-free school district zone. Thank you those who are present here in person and those watching us. And now we'll begin with the board consent agenda. Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, the administration recommends the approval of board consent agenda items reflected in Schedule C1 through C2.
Okay, we have items C1 through C2. We need a motion and a second to approve. Motion by Trustee Trent. It's been a month since we had a meeting. I gotta remember everybody's name again. Seconded by Trustee Barry. Thank you. Any discussion on those two items? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Seeing all hands raised and all trustees present, the motion passes unanimously. Just want to indicate that our student representative, Bryn, is excused tonight. She's at a varsity basketball game, and we hope they did well.
She was also named one of the 100 top players of the moment.
Oh, congratulations to her.
I'll save the shout out to when she's here live.
All right, thank you.
Her accolades.
All right, that brings us up to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Felice. Here. All right. So welcome back. Yeah, it's been it seems like it's been forever since we've had a meeting. So I hope everybody had a nice holiday break, including the people watching at home, the people here, and Happy New Year. Best wishes for a fantastic 2023. I am optimistic that we will have a great year all around. So I wanted to begin, considering all the news surrounding COVID-19 and the surge in cases on a global scale, we thought it would be important to keep the board and community apprised of our current COVID-19 numbers, which are displayed up on the screen. While the numbers are somewhat remarkable, it seems that in general terms, it's not impacted the operations of the school district like it's done in years past. We did have numerous staff members test positive, including myself, the week before the holiday break, but we've been able to manage it. Again, we want to emphasize that we're urging a community-wide approach, inclusive of schools, to just, again, take precautions to keep yourself safe. Again, that includes hand washing, certainly not coming to school or reporting to work if you're symptomatic, and certainly if you test positive. The idea is to keep our community safe, our neighbors safe, because while many argue that the symptoms of COVID are very mild, and that certainly was my experience with it, there are people who are vulnerable out there. I think it's important for us to look out for each other and keep people safe. So along those lines, again, what can we do? Again, stay up to date on vaccines. This is not an endorsement of vaccines or not, but it's a recommendation that comes from the CSC, the Department of Health, including flu and COVID-19 vaccines. Again, continually wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Certainly don't cough into your hands. You cough into your elbow. We tell that to our students all the time. Stay home when you're sick. I said this during the last board meeting. There used to be pride associated with working through your ailments and say, I'll work through a code. Those days are gone. If you're symptomatic, help your community by staying home or wearing a mask. I see a couple of people who are wearing masks now, just as a precaution. And in some countries, they've done this practice for many, many years as a courtesy. When you felt a little sick, you just kind of wore a mask just to sort of not, help not spread your sickness. And finally, wearing a mask. We do have COVID information available on our website, located right on our homepage, and that brings you up to another page that has links to information from the Department of Health and the CDC. But yeah, if you look at these numbers, it would seem really remarkable 2 years ago, and we would have probably been shut down, considering we've already had 204 cases among students and staff since the beginning of the year. Moving on with some holiday spirit on display. Our last board meeting was December 7th, so we had a couple things happen subsequent to that. We had a third grade concert at Critz Elementary School, which is really adorable. Those kids really sang those songs, and a credit to our new music teacher who had started 2 weeks prior and somehow got these kids ready for this concert. Miss Andrade, great addition to our staff, another great teacher in our district. So big shout to him and all of our music teachers. We had a holiday concert at Kramer, which I was really heartbroken that I was not able to attend because of COVID, but I heard it was fantastic. We had an impromptu holiday music playing at Frank P. Long in the hallways for our student musicians. They're going to be performing officially a little later in the month. Brookhaven had a holiday sing, which actually President Felice was able to attend. Those kindergartners, from what I hear, were super adorable. And again, really heartbroken I wasn't able to attend. I love these events, and I love seeing the kids get so excited when they're on stage. And we had snacks with Santa Clark over at Kramer again, which included some storytelling, some songs, and obviously opportunities to sit with Santa, have their photo taken. Even the Grinch got in on it, and from what I hear, his heart is getting bigger. Moving on with some more holiday spirit on display. I had a chance to stop by the middle school winter dance. A lot of fun. The kids were really dressed up to the T's and dancing around. Well, the girls were dancing, the boys were running around in circles. And some of the adults were having fun as well. So we really had a great time, and I love that we were able to provide these opportunities to our kids, just for them to socialize and get together. Our chamber choir did some caroling in the village, much to the delight of the community residents. And our students helping others, which is a student club at the high school, sort of facilitated the distribution of holiday gifts at Head Start, which is a program right across the parking lot. So a big shout out to that organization, but also to the BTA who collected gifts and for their continual support of our students and community. And at the end, the gifts that were left over, we were able to donate to the Lighthouse Mission. So we spread a lot of holiday joy. That certainly is a source of Clipper pride. So I'm really happy about that. But there are so many more things happening in our district. Please follow our social media handles, our website. Again, there's information accessible here. There's a community portal that gives you access to our email, anything that's sent district-wide. You can have access to those emails if you're a community member that doesn't have a child in the district. Of course, we have the Superintendent's Corner. This is my December entry, but it is updated with the January entry. But that's accessible right in the first page. My contact information, my Twitter feed, and my weekly update, which is basically a weekly blog posts I do for the district that the public can actually read by linking up on our website. So I repeat this every meeting because, again, it's important to me that we communicate a lot of the great things that are happening here. And I just want to make sure the community and board knows how to access the information. That concludes my portion of the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have questions of the superintendent's report? All right, we'll go around the room for trustees if you have trustees' reports. Trustee Barrett?
I have nothing to report at this time.
Okay. Trustee Puccini?
Yeah, to capitalize on what Mr. Santana mentioned in regards to the COVID reporting, I thought it was interesting. The night after our last board meeting, myself, Ms. Hayes, and Mr. Santana attended the Nassau Suffolk School Board's conference or workshop called Know Your Story, Tell Your Story, and it was, the special guest speaker was Assemblyman Thiel, who, if you've never met him, and I don't know if you guys had met him before, prior to that night, very engaging guy, very well connected, really knows what's going on up in Albany, and he's just a great guy to listen to and talk to. And two things that came out of that, because vaccines and masks inevitably came up. And I won't be able to exactly quote him, but he said under no uncertain terms did he envision a vaccine mandate for COVID-19 or a mask mandate coming from the state. Now, I believe him because in the sense that his stance is that it would have to be done by the legislature, and the legislature he doesn't believe will even consider it. My question would have been to him is, what if the governor calls a state of emergency? I think that's the only scenario which that could happen. So I would say, unless you hear on the news that Governor Hochul has declared a state of emergency in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic, there should not be any fear over masks returning or a vaccine mandate, regardless of how you feel. To Mr. Santana's point, I'm not making a statement of what you should want or shouldn't. I'm just telling you what he said, because I know that it has, with the numbers spiking, which again, I think it's relative, right? When you start at 0 and you go to 1, you went up 100%, right? So, but there seems to be much more discussion about it, and let's face it, people are getting sick, right? My whole family was sick with either COVID or the flu for the whole month of December, it feels like. So those that are concerned about that and thinking about that, at least you have that little bit of information. So, that's all. Other than that, it was a great night. I don't know if you guys all thought it was
I thought it was
good.
informative. One of the premises, or the reason we went, is how do we work with elected officials most productively? And basically the message we got is, number one, when you work with an elected official, it's not endorsing their political party. We're a school district, and when there's people in those positions that can help a school district out, we want to collaborate with them. And we put our political sort of feelings aside. But what was most telling to me is that anytime we approach an elected official and we want support for a school district, that we should go there with specific information, a specific ask, and a specific way where they can deliver. And that was basically his advice. Don't schedule an appointment with a meeting with an elected official and just say, we would love for you to have your support. That's vague, and their time is precious. So kind of the guidance I took away from it was, if, once we have those meetings where we approach elected officials, it's very important that we're very clear in kind of our wants and needs.
I think he was pretty clear too, I think, in the sense of how to advocate, right? Like, and again, Assemblyman Thiel, for anyone that doesn't know, is the only independent assemblyman in the state. He caucuses with the Democrats, but he very much is bipartisan with the way he governs. I mean, he's an impressive person to talk to and watch his record and how he works with everybody. And he's just a very unique guy, like on the way home, because he has legislature that he's co-sponsored to take the LIPA, PSEG, all the power source, and make it a true public utility again, because New York State, I didn't know this, is the only state in the country where the power company is partially privately owned. So, but there's an impact to schools because of pilot payments. So there's a kind of a lot to unpack, and he has actually placed the executive director of the National Suffolk School Board, Bob Vecchio, is on the committee for that, so that there is representation from public schools to make sure our interests in funding and things like that, don't go away. So it was an interesting night, and it was kind of interesting, and I kind of learned this from him years ago about how, don't send paper, don't send them a letter, and don't engage them on social media. Any of them, they hate it. They kind of turn the other way. But an interesting story about, Assemblyman Thiel, he's not, again, he touches a small part of William Floyd School District, but for the most part, he's out east, he's in Sag Harbor, so he's all the way out in the Hamptons, he's got both forks and whatever. But many years ago, if someone will remember, we had an issue here where we had a resident who filed a petition and had a ballot proposition placed at election to provide universal busing for everybody in the district, and that was an increase to our budget of over $500,000. And I sat in his office with a group of people, local board members from neighboring districts, and I explained this to him. And for me, that law, where the tax levy cap has many issues I have with, the biggest one is anybody could sink anybody's budget by putting a ballot proposition, because if it goes over, it could take you over your levy cap. Now you need 60%, and then if you fail, you can drop it, and then you can go back for a regular budget. I think that's reversed. You can really sabotage somebody's budget that way. So he filed, based on that conversation, and at the time, I believe it was Senator Croce's co-sponsored legislation to reverse it. So it didn't pass. But the point was, he was so willing to help a neighboring district, because Pat Med had a similar issue that same year. I thought it was really great to see how he will work for anybody, no matter where you are. He's in meetings upstate. On the way down, he stopped at a meeting in Nassau County, then he stopped to see us in Bethpage, and on his way home to Sag Harbor. So he's a hardworking guy, and he's really a good person to listen to and talk to and seek advice from. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you very much. Trustee Kavanaugh?
I have nothing to report.
Okay.
I'm
Trustee Trent? And
Can I
Trustee
follow
Hayes?
up on Chris's comments a little bit?
Go right
And
ahead.
maybe you can do the talking, because I'm a little bit hampered today. But I noticed that the results of the New York State School Board Association advocacy has resulted in some changes, legislative changes that have been signed now by Governor Hochul with regard to the pilots and IDAs. And I'd like to see these things go much further, but at least it's a step in the right direction. So I think that based, tagging on to your comments about the importance of advocacy, having the Nassau-Suffolk School Board Association working along with the New York State School Board Association, things do happen, even if it's slower than we might like.
I think, to you bring up the Nassau Suffolk School Board, I think it's an organization that's in an extraordinary position with the new executive director. Lorraine Della was there, I think, over 30 years, and she's a wonderful person, a wonderful advocate for education. Bob Vecchio now comes in and brings a different perspective, and, you know, following his Facebook page, and he might have put this, by the way, I don't know if you picked up on this, there is a Nassau Suffolk School Board Facebook page that's open to any board member, whether you're on that committee or not. So if you look for, I think you just look N-Suffolk, you know, SPB, whatever. Anyway, just some of the conversations that public education is in because of this organization that it's never been in before. Meetings with manufacturers. I saw he had a meeting in the city last week with a four-star general about, you know, military and how to, you know, whatever to help kids and how it goes, whatever it is. Working with manufacturers, working with just everybody on behalf of public education on Long Island is, we're really in a good spot for advocacy, quite a bit, so.
And that's also to be complemented with the New York State School Board Association, which we also participate in. And that email that Vice President Hayes refers to came over today. So I haven't been able to go through it in its entirety to see, we did know about it, that it was something that the NISBA was promoting in its legislative agenda. And so now that we have some action, you know, we were moving in that direction to gain some support, you know, through our other advocacy groups. So we'll have more to report on that for our next meeting. But I would agree with both of you that we're moving in the right direction. Did you have anything more for your report?
Just to say, I was really happy to see on the district website the report about the middle school history club field trip down to the Bellport Brookhaven Historical Society Museum. Walking distance of the middle school. I think that was a tremendous resource, and I'm really glad to see that the kids had the opportunity to do that.
These are the little things that, you know, kids cherish and remember, and a great way to supplement their learning.
All right, and then I will just round out by saying a number of the events that the superintendent reported on. I was very fortunate to also attend the various concerts. Also, there was a book reading at the Brookhaven Elementary School in one of the third grade classes, which also was a tremendous day with Dr. Raymond and her staff. I attended two varsity basketball games so far, and one I missed. I got there at the closing bell because I went into the other gym and got caught up in the wrestling tournament that was that weekend. And I had never been to a wrestling tournament before.
Something to see.
It was something to see. And it was, you know, I've complimented our football players for the conditioning that they do. And it was quite astonishing as to what these athletes go through in a wrestling tournament. So I got so caught up in the tournament that I got to the girls' varsity basketball too late. But I was very glad to spend the time there, and just, you know, hats off to everybody involved with conditioning our kids and putting them in such good shape to compete, and they compete well. Also attended two bowling tournaments, the girls' varsity and the boys' varsity. There's so few bowling alleys left. Most of them all compete at Sable Bowlaroo, I think it's called now. And so if you want to see any of the teams compete, just go there. And it's one team had an away game, one team had a home game, but they were all at the same lanes. So it made it very easy to go visit both teams. So that was fun too. And you know, just again, great things happening with our district. And I appreciate that the superintendent continues to highlight them the way he does, and not only highlight them, but attend. That's very important to us.
Yeah, and I've been feeling kind of guilty. I missed those last 3 days because of COVID, and like I said, I mean it when I say I'm heartbroken. I love seeing kids perform, and I love visiting the school, so I've yet to make it to a basketball game, but I'm happy to report I'll be there on Saturday afternoon to finally get in some basketball, so I'm looking forward to that.
All right, we're up to the public commentary portion of our agenda for the public to make testimony to the board. Do we have any cards? We have no cards, so I won't read the guidelines for that until the end. Okay. Next, we have items for discussion. And Mr. Superintendent, the first item is
Yes.
for you.
Thank you, President Felice. So, full disclosure, when I accepted the position, I had a nice conversation with my former superintendent, who's very excited for me and at this opportunity. And she said one thing to consider was an energy performance contract. An energy performance contract was actually ongoing in my former district. I'm familiar with a couple other districts that have engaged in those things. But just for the board's sake and for the public's sake, for the last couple of weeks, maybe a month or two, we've been working with Energia, which is a company based here in Long Island, with regards to the prospect of engaging in an energy performance contract. Energy performance contracts are budget-neutral capital improvement projects that not only make school districts more energy efficient, but indirectly create a revenue source for the district in the form of state aid. So here to present an Energia financial assessment for the South Country Central School District is Mike Carlson. He works for Energia, he's an engineer, and he's going to kind of explain to the board what an energy performance contract is and how it gets funded, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm going to put the spotlight to you. You could go up to the podium. I don't know if you're given a clicker, but I can give you my keyboard.
So thank you for the introduction. My name is Mike Carlson. I'm a project engineer with Energia. As was mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the potential energy performance contract for the South Country School District. So before I get started, I just want to thank you all for your time. We think there's a really strong opportunity here, and I'm excited to speak on it tonight. So when we first start these projects, we like to get a sense of the biggest needs and challenges in the school district and what could potentially be addressed through a performance contract. So I was able to get some information from the district about the current needs in the facilities. Your architect recently did a facility study which was shared with me. 3 items that frequently came up for almost every building in the district were lighting upgrades, HVAC improvements, and the desire to use modern solar energy. So all 3 of those items are things that could be addressed in an EPC. Starting with the lighting, getting into LED lighting, removing the existing fluorescent. While there has been some effort to do that already, from my understanding, as the existing have burned out, they've been replaced with LED. The majority of the lights in the district are still on the older systems. So through a performance contract, we'd replace every single light in the district with the modern LED technology. So not only does this have a ton of energy savings associated with it, it also goes a long way in improving the facilities for the students and staff. Getting modern lighting into the classrooms. There'll be some control systems associated with them that the teachers can use to adjust the light levels based on what's going on in the classroom that day. In the same vein with HVAC improvements, again, some energy savings there, but again, just goes a long way in improving the facilities, making sure that every room in every building in the district is at the temperature that the district sets it at. Getting rid of those overheating and underheating issues in some classrooms. And then for the solar energy, I know that there's some problems with the existing system, so our goal would be to get as much of that replaced as possible with modern equipment that is going to work for the next 25, 30 years. So now that you have an understanding of what we're looking to do here, I want to explain a bit about how these work, how they're funded. So energy performance contracting is a state-sponsored initiative with the intention of relieving school districts of the burden for paying for needed infrastructure improvements. So the entire project would be funded by the energy savings that result from the scope of work, as well as the state aid that the district receives. So it is budget neutral in that sense, because you're essentially taking 20 to 30% typically of your existing utility budget, and you're using that money that's already in the budget to fund the project. So before I go forward on this slide, I just want to flip here just to talk a bit more about the budget neutral approach. So these are typically financed through a tax-exempt lease purchase. So essentially how that works is after construction is completed, at the 1-year mark at the end of construction would be when you make your first payment back to the bank. So during the construction period, you'd be paying the contractor as the work is completed. But when you're paying back the loan, that payment is actually deferred until 1 year after construction is complete, because that's when you'll realize the first full year of energy savings. So that amount is what, again, is going to be used to fund the project.
Do you have
Yeah.
questions at the end, or
No,
you want to
go
make sure
ahead.
you go?
Go ahead.
Is that fine for you as we go? So when you talk about being budget neutral, for how long?
Yeah, so the project is typically financed for a 15-year period. So over those 15 years, you're going to be using the savings from the project to make the financing payment, and then after, those 15 years, all those savings are just coming right back to the district.
Okay, so then, how do we know that technology's not gonna be needed to be upgraded in 15 years from now?
Yeah.
Because the way it'll be perceived, I think, by some in the community is, we went through this with solar panels, right? Not, maybe 10, 12 years ago, the district spent a lot of money on solar panels, they're basically obsolete now. Now, whether or not we made money, or I don't, I can't really answer that right now, but that's gonna be a concern.
Yeah, no, understood. So, I'll talk a bit about the guaranteed
Sure.
aspect of the energy
Okay.
savings. I think that might answer your question. So, the next phase of this project would be to put out a request for proposal document. Energia will put that together on your behalf. And the intention of that is to solicit proposals from qualified energy services contractors, or ESCOs, ESCO. So they'll walk to your buildings, they'll put together a proposal, and for each measure that they're suggesting, they're gonna show what the associated energy savings are for that particular measure. Once you get a contractor selected and enter into a contract with them, there'll be language in that contract that shows how they're gonna measure those savings after construction is complete to validate that what they guaranteed actually was realized by the district. So there's various different methodology for how those are gonna be measured, but the way the district is protected is, say they guarantee $100,000 in savings. When they put together that measurement report at the 1-year mark after construction, they do that every year after construction is complete. Say they only measured that there was $90,000 realized by the district. They're contractually required to cut you a check to make up that $10,000 difference. So one way or another, you are getting that $100,000. It's just a matter of, is it through the energy savings, or if there was a shortfall, it would then come from the contract.
Okay, so just, that leads to another thing, right? Because we had, and I apologize, because we've had these things happen, right? Year 13, we don't realize it, and the contract is out of business.
Yeah, so when we put together the RFP, we have pretty specific language in there that shows what the financial backing of the company needs to be in order to be eligible to
Okay.
propose on the project. So companies that we work with, Honeywell, Johnson Controls, Siemens, Trains, they're massive companies that have been around a long time. So that's not an issue that we've ever run into before, because the language in the RFP prevents some of
Okay.
those companies that are gonna go out of business from proposing on the project in the first place.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I have a question about how do you pay for the work up front?
Yeah, so
Because you were talking about what happens after the work is done.
So the financing is secured with the bank before construction begins. So you'll get the money from the bank, and you'll use that money to pay the contractor as the work is completed through the construction period. And then after construction is complete, you're paying the bank back at that point. So you already have the money during construction, and you're paying the contractor with that money, and then the loan is paid back to the bank.
That leads to another question now. So, don't we need a ballot proposition to borrow money?
Yeah, so, sorry, New York State law does not require a public vote on these projects. You are allowed to go out for a vote, and that would entitle you to an additional 10% in aid from the state. But it's not a requirement for you to, because of the self-funding aspect. It's not, the money's already in the budget that you currently have, so you're not required to go out for a public vote.
Even to finance money and accrue interest, we don't need, I'm looking like from business superintendent to legal.
Yeah, there's like 146 districts that have engaged in these projects.
Yeah, I just didn't think you could borrow money without voter approval. Okay, so then,
No, it's not typically a voter approval for energy performance.
okay. I had another question, but didn't come to me, so I'll come back.
Yeah, and this last thing I mentioned for the financing, once we get to that point, we'll work with the district's fiscal advisor, and they'll set up all the parameters. They're really specialists in that. We'll help out where we can, but they'll take the lead on the financing aspect. So just jumping back real quick, one last thing I wanted to touch on, community engagement. I talked about the financial benefits of the project as well as the upgrades to the district, but you're also reducing your energy spend, so there's obviously a green aspect to that. So we can put together some documentation that kind of translates what you're saving into some real world terms for the community and anyone that might be interested in that information. So a couple slides ago, I gave some general information about what could be included in the project, but I got a little more specific on this slide. So one thing I didn't mention previously was one of the New York State laws is that an energy performance contract has to have overall an 18-year simple payback or better. So what I mean by that is the total cost divided by the annual savings needs to be 18 or less. So say the project's generating $100,000 in savings, the most you could do it would be $1.8 million worth of work. So I broke up the measures here into what we call fast and slow payback measures. Fast payback measures being anything by itself that has an 18-year simple payback or better, and slow obviously being anything with longer than 18-year payback. So the idea is you have to find a balance between the fast and slow payback so that the overall project meets that 18-year payback that's required. So just running down the list quick. Fast payback measures, a couple examples: lighting, infiltration reduction, pipe and valve insulation. And then a couple of the slow payback measures that I noticed on the district's facility study, boilers, control system improvements, unit ventilators, rooftop units, air quality improvements. Those are all things that are eligible for performance contracts. So any questions before I move forward?
So is there a specific dollar amount associated or a ballpark that our district will need? For
Yeah,
these
so,
funds? Is that coming? I don't,
I
okay.
got it right here.
All right, no, okay, perfect.
So yeah, I mentioned that we did a preliminary assessment. So the purpose of that study is to determine the feasibility of a potential project. I would like to get a sense of what size project we're looking at here. So based on what we've seen from your utility bills, we're estimating about a 20% reduction, which would result in about $300,000 in annual savings. That would fund a $5.4 million project. Another thing to note is when the energy savings and the state aid are combined, you're actually going to be exceeding the financing payment each year. So that excess cash is going to come back to the district in the form of positive cash flow. So over the 18-year project term, we'd be looking at about $2 million in positive cash flow.
So you're saying that the $5.4 million is aidable at a rate of 66.2%?
Not the entire $5.4 million. There's some things that the district doesn't consider aidable, but typically about 85 to 90% of that $5.4 million is aidable.
And if we went to the voters for approval, we can get an additional 10%?
Yeah, additional 10%.
So it's an additional 10%, so it can go up to 70, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and one thing I would note with that, you wouldn't be able to grow the overall project size if you went out for voter approval. You would only be growing the positive cash flow that you're generating. So typically, when we see a district go out for voter approval, it's when their aid ratio without voter approval is like 10, 20%, where they need that amount to make sure that the cash flow is positive each year. When you're at 66%, typically not worth it to go out for it. I mean, we can if that's what the district decides to do, but definitely not something that we would need to do for this project.
We could use some extra cash.
Yeah. All right, any questions about the finances before I move on? All set. All right, and one last thing to mention here is, since this is a feasibility study, we're really conservative with our estimates at this point. So this is really, it is really a worst case scenario. Typically the number for the percent reduction is 25, 30+%. So, those, as you're generating more savings, obviously the project size is just going to continue to grow. So these next couple of slides, I just want to talk about Energia a little bit, talk about our role in the project. So I mentioned those energy services contractors. They're the ones that do the walkthroughs of your buildings. They're the one on the hook for the guarantee. I may be wondering how we fit into the equation. We're the district's owner's representative, as well as the engineer of record for the project. So during the development of the project, we're going to be reviewing all the proposals as they come in response to the RFP. They're pretty lengthy documents, so we take the lead on that. We'll take out all the important information, share it with the district administration, help you come to a point where you're ready to make a decision on what contractor to partner with to move forward with. Then once you have someone selected, they'd go back into your buildings, do an investment grade audit to finalize their proposal. Again, we'd review that at the end, make sure everything's technically sound. And then once the contract's signed and we get into the design of the project, as the design engineer of record, we take the lead on the design work. I would note that the New York State laws, you need a third party to the design regardless. We just offer all those additional services that you might not see from other companies. And then, we take the lead on the submission and approval from the state. They're very specific with what they look for in these energy performance contracts. So as a company that's done over 125 of these projects, the majority of those in New York, we've had a lot of experience. We know what they're looking for. We've had a lot of success getting these approved pretty quickly. A couple other things to mention. We do offer a $5,000 scholarship for a STEM-bound student of the district selection. We also offer a curriculum enhancement program for the district to consider. During the development of this project, we're going to have a bunch of different engineers, project managers, tradesmen and women on site. It offers a pretty unique opportunity for some of those employees to come in to, if you have a STEM club or a sustainability club, we're always happy to come in, talk about the project, talk about what we do at our job, how we got to our field, all that. Just something for the district to consider. By no means have to do it, but we've had a lot of success with that at some other districts. And yeah, last thing here is the next steps. Kind of touched on most of this already, but again, the next phase of the project would be that proposal competition, the RFP. We'd be looking at as many proposals as possible for the district. Typically we see about 3 to 5 respondents based on the size of the project we're anticipating. Submit to the state after contract approval, then we get into construction after financing is secured. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I had today. You happen to answer any additional questions? Yeah.
Of the 125 projects that you've worked on, how many times has a contractor had to cut back a check to a school district because the numbers hadn't worked out the way you anticipated?
Yeah, I don't have an exact number, but it certainly happens. And in a weird way, it almost kind of validates the overall process, right? When there is a shortfall, it shows that those measurements are real. So I would say maybe like 10% of projects in 1 year or 2 years see a shortfall. We've never had an issue getting a contract to cut a check for a district, but for the most part, most of the time the guarantee is hit.
Other questions? Did you have something?
I'm just going to make a general comment that one of the things that's exciting about this is our buildings do need capital improvements, and this is a way to accomplish that in sort of a very comprehensive manner, because Energia, and I don't work for them, but I came from a district that was using them, and the relationship was very positive because they do take care of all those other details, working with the contractors. They take a lot of the onus off of us. And they're guaranteeing their work. And that's something that was certainly appealing to me as a superintendent, and also the fact that it is state-approved capital improvement projects. One of the risks that happen is sometimes architects say, well, we can do these improvements for less money, but they don't come with those same guarantees. They don't come with the same expertise that Energia has had in working in all these districts. And I just think it's a great plan, not just to make our schools greener and more energy efficient, but again, to generate, even though you're kind of spending the money, you're getting some of that money back in revenue over the next 18 years, which I think is great.
And I'd like to thank you for presenting again tonight. You presented at our Finance and Facilities meeting and went through a number of these questions to give us those, assurances that this is the best way to go to, really enhance our infrastructure without a burden on on the overall tax dollar.
Yeah, absolutely, I'm happy to, and not the most aesthetically pleasing work that we're looking to do, but it is stuff that needs to get done, right? And then you could use some of that other money to do some of the more appealing items, right?
I just have a quick question. I didn't see in the slide about your company. How are you guys compensated?
Yeah, sure, that's a good question. So our fee is built into the self-funding project cost, so there's no out-of-pocket in bringing us onto the project. Initially, we are paid by the ESCO that gets selected, but they're reimbursed that fee once you go out and get the financing. And the reason for that is a lot of our work is upfront before construction even begins, so the milestones that we get paid at are before financing occurs. So initially we get paid by the ESCO, and then that fee is built into the cost that they're going to get paid down the line. So.
And you work that fee out with them or with us?
What's that?
You work that fee out with them?
No, we would work it out with the district, yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
typically for a project this size, it's about 6% of the total implementation cost.
Any other questions? Thank you again for being with
Yeah,
us.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson.
Thank you.
Very
Thank
informative. All right, so we're going to go on to our next item discussion, which is our special meetings. I don't have a slide for that. Basically, as it stands, we scheduled 2 tentative special meetings to discuss contract negotiations, as we have 3 contracts that have yet to be settled. That's contracts for our clerical unit, our safety officer unit, and our administrators. So what I'm proposing is that on Wednesday, January 11th and Wednesday, January 25th, we schedule special meetings so we can go into executive session to talk about the contracts at length and in depth and be able to really work on it with the diligence that it merits. The reason I want to have special meetings is because typically executive session is about an hour in length. I don't think that's sufficient enough time to have a real discussion. So the scheduling of a special meeting will really be focused on that one purpose. So I'm proposing 2 tentative dates, which is January 11th. If we can kind of go through 3 contracts during that one meeting, then perhaps we won't need the second date. But I kind of wanted to put that second date on the calendar just to be sure.
I won't be here January 11th.
Do we have something on the 18th?
We have a board meeting.
A regular board meeting?
It will be our first budget presentation. It's already that season.
Is anybody else unavailable for the 11th and/or the 25th?
I'm not available on the 25th. I've got the 11th penciled in, but I should be able to make it, but that may be in doubt now.
Okay.
So, I mean, do we really need like 2 meetings? I'd be honest, but I don't see how long are these meetings gonna be? I don't see what is gonna take up, I don't understand what the content is for the meeting.
So typically, and again, I'm put in a difficult situation. I don't want to talk too much about contract negotiations
Sure.
because they're confidential in nature.
Well, I think you put it well,
Yeah.
you know, to merit the discussion that is necessary for our employees. We
So-
want to give it the ample time that's necessary without having to rush through executive session prior to a meeting. So that's why we thought it would be best to just have a special meeting and the only subject matter is negotiations. So we wouldn't be limited in time and we could give it the attention that it
And
deserves.
as a new person to this district, myself, Mr. Gee is new as well, you know, we really want an opportunity to understand the district's, the contracts in their entirety. And often we get caught up in percentages or increases or increments, but I think there's a lot of contractual language that really should be looked at and discussed.
I guess for me, it's hard, like, it's like we're putting the cart before the horse, right? Because we don't have any demand, we don't have anything to negotiate with, but we do for some, not all, right?
We have for all.
We have
All
all of
3
their
units.
requests.
Correct.
Okay. The board hasn't seen them all yet, though, right? We only saw the administrators?
So we have.
We got them all?
Yes.
In the update, or is it in the board doc, the last time we met?
Update.
I knew we did administrators, I didn't think we got it. Okay, I'll take a look.
Can we?
And then we
make it-
circulated, I'm sorry, just a minute. And then we circulated the collective bargaining agreements as well, which are lengthy.
No, I get it,
and
I mean,
probably
I
don't
saw
read
them.
So, you know, so that we give it the time that it deserves. You had another comment?
Can't we lock in the 11th? Because it sounds like sitting here tonight, everybody can be here on the 11th.
Except
Oh,
for-
you
Exception.
can't, I'm sorry.
But yeah, I would suggest we lock in, if we can, both days.
And if we finish it,
Yeah.
we don't need to,
Correct.
to do the 25th.
Correct. But I think it's important for trustees to also, especially for our new trustees, to appreciate some of the contract language and look at it. And for us to be able to answer any questions that we may have.
No, I couldn't agree more. All right, so we're, consensus, we're locked in for the 11th. I apologize. Trustee Kavanaugh, that you won't be available.
There's no other day, are you out the whole week? or-
I'm away all of next week.
And I do, there is some urgency because this is something I was hoping to have accomplished before the start of the new year. Life happens, so, you know, I just would love to have this resolved as soon as possible. Moving on to our next item for discussion, which is our Director of Technology again. Again, we're proposing the establishment of a Director of Technology. As reported in our last board meeting, I believe it's imperative that the district secure a Director of Technology. This does not represent a new position, but a position that has not been filled for a couple of years. Just to give some context, anytime I go to a conference and we speak about cybersecurity, the recommendation to me is that, you know, speak to your Director of Technology. And when I say, well, we don't have one, people have a certain response to it because I think it's a position that's sorely needed in a school district. In terms of what the position would cover, you know, you have to consider the potential threats of cyber attacks. There's been a couple of school districts that were hit. Comac was the latest school district that was hacked by a cyber attack. It seems like Eastern European countries are targeting school districts now because they know they don't have sophisticated mechanisms to protect themselves as huge companies. So cybersecurity is a huge, I think, area that we need to really have someone to focus on. We have education law 2D, which speaks to confidentiality. You think about our whole system is electronic and digital, and we have a lot of confidential information, so it's really being up to speed with that law and making sure we're compliant and we protect the privacy of our community members. And just the sheer volume of digital platforms that we use on a day-to-day basis in our classrooms. You know, ever since the pandemic, we shifted to so many different platforms, and we really need someone to support that instructional component. And this person would be a school administrator with a background, not just in IT, obviously, but in education as well. So they can speak to the teaching and using the instructional technology. But again, this is not just my opinion. This guidance was given to the board by our external auditors. And so I did provide this job description a couple of weeks ago with regards to the, it's not that legible, with regard to all the responsibilities this person would have. But namely, again, it's going to be cybersecurity, education law 2D, plans for the implementation, evaluation, improvement of our instructional and information technology program, including the formulation of a new vision and objectives. You know, we do want to also get kids engaged more in different media platforms and make it a part of our instructional programs. And again, you need someone to kind of support that. And that person would work with our administrative and instructional team to plan for professional learning, to provide high-quality data to support and implement the district's initiatives. So there's the data component to it, the instructional component to it, and just making sure that we're kind of up to date with our equipment and we provide the appropriate training. Not to diminish the importance of our IT staff, which are fantastic. This is someone who's going to come and do more than just the hardware and software piece. It's the instructional piece.
I have a, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
I'm going to display that.
So is it, you're going to display the, oh, there it goes.
Yeah, so here's our organizational chart. I'm going to let you ask a question in 1 second. We added the Director of Technology under our directors. One of the things I want to say about this organizational chart, this is our current existing organizational chart. As I mentioned, we're looking to change it around, and but that's a process that's going to take some time, and I didn't want to rush into creating a new organizational chart. So I added the Director of Technology. That's where that position was held in the past, under the directors. And that person, the things that are highlighted, those are the people who would be under their direct supervision. That person supports teachers and works with teachers, but supervises really the IT staff, the computer lab technicians, and works with BOCES and all these external agencies to support our instructional program. So what?
So my question, do you,
That was,
may I go?
yeah, he answered my first question. I just have one more.
Go ahead.
Is that under, is placing the technology director under the supervision of the curriculum superintendent? Is that normally how it's done?
Yeah, usually it's all the directors are under the office of the assistant super curriculum instruction.
So, okay, so I want to follow up on that question. So listing technology under directors, that's your new recommendation?
That's my new recommendation. I'm going to be recommending another organizational chart during a reorg in the summer. Because I do think it's going to take kind of a year to look at. I just think that with all the lines, and I apologize to the public, people at home probably can see it a little clearer because it's displayed fully on our screen. But I really do want to construct, I'm a very visual person and a visual learner. I want to construct an organizational chart that's easy to kind of follow and so that we all understand our roles. Solid lines, for example, means like direct supervision. Dotted line means you consult with or work with. We spoke ad nauseum with different organizational charts that we got from other school districts. Some were less confusing than others. Some had different positions that we didn't have. And we've been toying around, and we kind of have a draft that we're working on. But in terms of urgency, I do think we need to have this position established as soon as possible because
Yeah, I don't think the board disagrees with you. I think what I'd like to understand is how we are operating now. So where you have computer lab assistants highlighted, you have the network system administrator highlighted, and the technology staff. That is also what is at present, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So is your recommendation going to be to move those 3 items that are highlighted all under the technology bullet under directors?
So one of the things I think that's confusing about the organizational chart is technology right now is under the auspices of the business office. I don't think that's where it should exist. So that current model was established before I started working here, and it could just been because we're dealing with IT staff, not really instructional staff. And the difference is the IT staff and the current people in their positions, again, they troubleshoot hardware, they make sure that, we have our filters in place, they make sure our technology is working. I call them the wires and buttons people. We need someone to really support the instructional piece. And that's why you shifted over to instruction, because in order for us to deliver the instructional technology and use those platforms, that really has to kind of be parallel to our instructional initiatives. So for me, and discussing it with my cabinet, it's really an instructional piece. So, but that person would also supervise the IT staff, because they're the ones delivering the actual hardware piece of it.
And the audit report that you referenced,
Yep.
calling for technology to be under the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, as I recall, it suggested making the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum the IT Director, which just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense. So, I talk to Ms. Doyle all the time about it. And
Not that we don't
No,
you
Mr.
know,
Listen,
think your capabilities are there, but
it's a full-time job.
It's like, how can that be if you're responsible
full
for the
disclosure.
education of the entire
And
district?
right now, I'm the data protection officer for the district, which keeps me up at night. Because, again, that's not the role that I should be filling. I just don't have the expertise.
No, I think we're in agreement there. So, but just I wanted to make it clear for the rest of the board that, because some of the board members weren't here for that audit, but the audit named you. And
Yeah,
at the
because
time,
they
it
use,
just seemed.
I believe they use the existing people, because the
Yeah,
position didn't
yeah.
exist, but it unanimously, people say you need someone in that position. And in my former school district, we had someone in that position that I used a lot as a high school principal. They provided support, ongoing professional development. They did this little webinars to help support teachers. And basically what happens is as proficient as Beth Doyle is in pedagogy and instructional delivery and all those initiatives that she's in charge of now, the actual use of the platforms is where her area of expertise is not there. And it's not a criticism of her,
But-
because, for example, we'll use Google Classroom or Canvas or Kami, all these software in our classrooms. How do we best teach our teachers how to use it most effectively? And we need someone really in charge of that piece. In addition to the whole data protection piece, that's a huge, huge component. We need someone who's going to be at the forefront of everything we need to know about cybersecurity. And really, to me, that's the biggest focus of that position is the cybersecurity and the data protection. All the other stuff is sort of the silver lining and the frosting on the cake. And another piece that I didn't display yet is we are in desperate need of a new district website. I love South Country, Clipper Pride. The website's not a huge source of pride for me. And so, and that's not to criticize anybody who designed it. It's just an antiquated, sort of template. And I would love our website to reflect some of the great things we're doing. And it has to be aesthetically beautiful too. It's got to be, I'm all about marketing and how we present ourselves, and this is our public face. And so that to me would be an urgent sort of project for someone who seems like.
In the role of Director of Technology.
So they wouldn't do the website themselves.
Mhm.
You hire people to do that, but they would be the ones getting all, and we went through that process in my former district where surveys are handed out, we analyze our, what makes it user-friendly, what does this community really want to see on that first page, what should be quick links that we include. And it was a great process. It was almost a year-long process just to decide what we wanted the website to include. And then we hired someone and they implemented it. But it's important because so many people go to websites. And I remember when I first started, it took me, I failed, but after a half hour I gave up. I couldn't find my superintendent's corner. So, we had Syntax works with us, was here, and they kind of manage and they post to our website, but they don't website design. So they were able at least to move my superintendent's corner link to the, to the home page to make it easier. But yeah, that's one of those my dreams is to really have a beautiful website.
And it wouldn't be Ms. Doyle who has to
Correct.
design that great website.
Right.
So, one of the other things that's jumping out at me and looking at the organizational chart, and I support your suggestion and recommendation to move the computer lab assistants out from under personnel organizational chart into under the responsibility of the Director of Technology. Should we also look at the nurses and the nurses' aides and take that out of the responsibility of
So here's the-
curriculum and put that?
So here's the issue where I'm having, it's very convoluted, and it's hard to come up with a graphic that really captures everything, because in reality, I'm gonna give you one example. Building principal really supervises everybody in the building, including the lab assistants, including nurses, including TAs, but they also have people that work directly with them. So how do you kind of capture that in an organizational chart where, yeah, our director of technology is gonna be supervising our lab technicians and stuff, but should something happen that requires management in a school building, that really is under the auspices of the building principal. So that's what we're trying to clear up, is really get rid of exactly what you're discovering.
Okay.
Like, some of it, to me, doesn't make sense. So it's, you know, right now, you know, our
So
direct,
first, you're concentrating on the director of technology.
I just want the position in place.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so this is not a proposal for a finalized organizational chart, but I just wanted to have it included in our organizational chart if it's gonna, you know, be a part of our team.
Well, I think we've known for a while we needed one,
Yes.
so.
Correct. And in reality, it should be a practice of the school board to approve the organizational chart on a pretty regular basis. Should really look at it, examine it, and if you look at, when we did our research, a lot of the websites that we found from other school districts literally had all the adoption dates on their orgs, and you saw that. It was pretty frequent that they adapted and changed it.
Could you provide that to the Board of Education on when that happened here in South Country? Can they go back and trace that? When we approved changes to the organizational chart or updated
We could
the
try to,
organizational chart?
we'll try to
We'll
find
try and
it.
recreate that.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good exercise in moving forward, because that may be one of the answers as to why it became so antiquated, you know,
Right.
depending upon how often we looked at it.
We did look. We couldn't find it initially. I mean, we'll look deeper.
I didn't want to actually
Yeah.
say
What, the
that,
organizational chart?
I'll say it. Yeah, yeah.
but
So,
that's.
I mean, we've seen it,
That's
we've
what I'm
had it
saying.
before.
no, I'm
It's
sorry.
not-
Our organizational chart is posted. I'm not saying we haven't seen it, but I'm saying I couldn't find the last time it was revised.
Right,
Yeah,
I
that's,
mean,
because I don't.
It's been a
recall.
while, but I
It's
mean,
been a while.
I don't, I mean, I wanna say it was done when we added the directors.
Well, that was,
I'm kind
But
of
that
seeing
won't-
it's almost irrelevant at this point.
Well, that's my point, I mean, like,
Last-
what does it matter, right? But it,
So if we recognize that it needs to be updated and better organized, let's just move forward.
no, I think we do agree on that, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, so that we know how to improve in moving forward, if we see how much time we spent in between, then we know, well, we don't want to engage in that practice moving forward. We'd like to improve it to 2 years, or 3 years, or annually, or whatever the case may be.
Correct, just make that, but we could just make that determination now. It was like 16, I think, that we added the directors. I kinda remember, I
It
was
was
like.
before I got on the board,
It
and
was
I
like
got on
50
the
it was like
board at
15.
16.
No, it was like 15. It was like
So that's-
15, 16 school,
Yeah,
yeah, it's been
that's 7
7
years
years.
ago.
and a lot of times the board just readopts the same organizational
Yeah, that's
chart.
all we
So
ever
I-
did, 'cause it
So I
was-
don't wanna misrepresent and say school districts change their
No,
organizational
I
chart.
don't think it's misrepresenting at all.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, it never hurts to look.
I wanna look, that's why, yeah.
And that's why, you know, and that's why we hired you. We hired you to look and bring to the board
Right.
some of those nuances, and we're not trying to be critical, we're just trying to improve.
Yeah, no, I don't think,
we're all
I
in
don't take it,
agreement. We should be looking at it.
yeah, I don't take it at all as
What was that?
criticism, because a few board meetings ago, I actually proposed the fact that we were looking at organizational chart and looking to revamp it, so I'm totally on the same page. I think, you know, you have to be reflective in your practice, and if you don't evolve and change on a regular basis, then you're not really growing or evolving. So, you know, the organization, once we come up with a kind of organizational chart that we're kind of satisfied with, and let's say we adopt it during our reorg meeting in the summer, we may look at it and then see how it kind of works and say, you know what, there's something that can be done better. And I think that's the healthiest way or the healthiest approach in running a school district.
I'd rather you spend your time doing that than trying to dig through when it was last created.
Well, I'll delegate that, how about that?
I respectfully disagree.
But yeah, but we're gonna be looking, and we have been looking and talking about it. I presented it to my administrative team here, in addition to the cabinet, so, you know, what helps is just understanding who goes to who and what the chain of command is. And I wanna eliminate like gray areas or ambiguity.
Yeah, and the reason that the computer lab assistants sticks out in my mind is because we had a layoff 2 years ago with the computer lab assistants, and they appealed to us that one is assigned to each building, and now we had one less in one of the buildings, so one person had to be responsible for 2 buildings. And was that really the most efficient way for us to deal with the need of computer lab assistants, especially, and that was pre-COVID. And so, and then boom, COVID hits, and what do we need more than anything else? Computers and technology. So it really wasn't very forward-thinking at that time, and it was really
But that wouldn't have
just
been on the
operational.
organizational chart, though.
Well, it is on the organizational.
Not the
chart.
individual lab and how many people we have and where they are, that's, we have lab assistants and who they fall under, but who's in what building and where they are and how personnel is dispensed and how many isn't on the organizational
Well,
chart.
no, what I'm saying is the importance of technology to support the director, and then taking all of the director's responsibilities for lab technicians, the rest of administration of the network, and putting that all under one. So, that's all.
So yeah, and in terms of, again, in terms of compensation for this, a position like this, we want to make sure that the compensation is competitive. I don't like to give a fixed number at this point because, it all depends on, a lot of variables. You want to make sure you're in a range that's competitive with similar districts to us. In addition to that, when you hire somebody, you have to see where they're coming from. And then sometimes, if they're a person that's currently in a position and doing really well, that's going to merit a certain compensation. If it's someone who's going to be doing this for the first time, it merits a different type of compensation. So, right now, that's what we're kind of looking at. And if the board's approval and if we can post for this, we're going to really be looking at competitive. We don't want to overpay, we don't want to underpay. We just want to be in the right spot.
Sounds good.
So basically, and this is a F3 item that I wrote down, and I don't know if maybe Sammy Hall can help with this, but I did have the administration does recommend the approval of the current organizational chart, and by approving the organizational chart, then we approve the position, and we can move forward as long as it's.
With what's before us right now?
Yeah, again, it's not changed except for the addition of the technology director.
So how do we approve the organizational chart that adds a position without knowing what the salary is specifically? Like, don't we need that?
Well, once we have a candidate, then we propose a salary, and then you have to approve the
We
salary.
have to approve that.
No, I know that, I'm just saying, how do we approve it before that?
Well,
But
wait, if you want to approve the organizational chart as presented, and you have these other items highlighted,
Okay. So what we could do is create a different resolution to create the position.
now or at another meeting?
Can you wait till the next meeting?
Of course.
I mean, like, we don't need this to be approved before you go out and post a job and we hire somebody.
You do.
You
You have to have
The
the.
position does, but not the organization. It's fine.
But, yeah, the position needs to be approved. One way that was recommended to be approving it is just approving the organizational chart, but we could do a separate resolution.
Listen, I don't mind, because we're gonna vote on it again. I'm just saying, it just seems a little, from a process standpoint, it seems a little silly to sit here and vote in favor of adding a position that we don't know yet what it's gonna cost. That's all. That's my only point. But I get your point that we can reject it whenever we want on the vote if we don't like the money, but.
Typically, the range is between $120,000 and $150,000.
Yeah, okay.
So in theory, we support moving in that direction, but we haven't approved the finances yet. But now this brings another question. If you're asking us to approve this organizational chart tonight, these highlights, are you suggesting moving the
No,
the
the
highlighted
reason-
items?
No, the reason I
Under-
highlighted those boxes is just to indicate the people who be working directly with the director of technology.
So they're gonna move,
Then they
though.
have to
I
move
think it's
in
what
the
Lisa's
organizational
getting at, is they're
chart.
gonna move, so we'd
So,
be
I would-
approving an inaccurate organizational chart. It would have to be,
Correct, and then we're gonna propose the revised organizational chart.
Got it.
So
So-
maybe the resolution should be just approving the position.
we should approve the position, not the
Correct.
organizational chart.
Correct.
With a, okay.
Can you do that first? Is legal comfortable with doing that first, or should we just wait till the next meeting?
To do the resolution to create the position,
Yeah, without approving the organizational chart.
well, you have to create the position first.
For the
And then it will
organizational
go into the
Okay, so then we are on the right, in the right.
But the organizational chart needs to be amended before we can approve it. That's what you're getting at.
Yes.
We can't approve the organizational chart tonight because you have 3 spots highlighted to the right that are not going to be there any longer. So if we approve it tonight, we're approving that, and that's not what it's gonna
Well,
be.
that's the
But
existing.
I think,
No, but that's the existing organizational chart,
Yeah,
so
so-
that's how we're operating.
That's, so you have to make it clear that we are approving an organizational chart that will be amended from this to move all those 3 highlighted spots under the highlighted spot that's
I
with
don't think
red.
we're voting on any of that tonight, but we could vote on the position itself.
Yeah, I think it'd be
That's what it was
cleaner
originally
to,
asking, that's what I'm saying.
to have council draft a resolution creating a new position. We can vote on that on January 11th. Again, the salary range I've included in the resolution. Typically, it's about $120,000 to $150,000 from what we've gathered so far.
But this isn't the org chart because you're adding here technology, right?
It is, I thought it was. I thought that's
With
the
the,
reason
with
we were
the
doing it.
difference is the technology. That's
This
it.
can't be our organization chart, because it contradicts itself.
Right.
That's the point we're getting at.
Yeah.
So,
What do you mean?
when we add
If
the
they're
director of
working on it,
technology,
yeah.
those three highlighted positions
Correct.
move over there. So that's not accurate. So I think
Correct.
what trustees are having an issue with, I know I'm having an issue, I think Mrs.
No, I
Felice is having an
appreciate
issue
that.
with,
Yeah.
is the fact that that's not accurate. So I
Correct.
can't vote on something until I see accurate
Correct.
representation of what it
Correct.
is. That's
No,
all
I
I'm getting
agree.
at.
Again, the guidance I was given was to do an organizational chart first, but, because my initial thinking was to write a resolution approving the position. And then we see where the position fits within the organization.
I have a quick
Yeah.
question.
No,
I was under the understanding that the position was already the position was already here, just not filled.
No, it was
No.
here prior. This district did have a director of technology at one point.
Okay. With that same job description, or was it different?
No, that's a new job description.
Okay, any further questions? And we'll,
Yeah, we'll prepare a resolution, which I think is
without
cleaner.
formally tabling it, we'll table it all for the next
Yes.
agenda, for the next agenda.
Sorry to create confusion.
No.
No, I appreciate your
confusion.
feedback,
No
and,
confusion.
it's good feedback.
No, we
We'll
need
process
to
it.
clear.
The 18th.
Right, I think they just said.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it
It's not an
myself.
We
organizational
don't have
chart.
it.
Keep down on my
The
water.
next drill meeting is the 18th.
Right.
Yeah, but he could still put it on the agenda and we would be in public portion for just that
Okay.
item, yeah.
For the 11th.
Yeah, you had said we were tabling it to the 11th.
Unless we wanted to make a vote on just the
Which we're not
position
doing.
itself, could be done tonight if we wanted to.
No, because
No,
council
you need a
doesn't have
formal,
the
you need
resolution.
a resolution.
Yeah. So to your question, it could be put on the 11th agenda. We would be required to stay in public portion for that portion of
For
the
that vote.
vote. Or if it can wait till the 18th,
Understood.
if administration thinks it can wait till the 18th, you'll be back for the 18th meeting?
I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
do it
maybe
that
we'll
way.
just leave that for the 18th then.
That's fine.
All right?
Okay, thank
But
you.
thank you for reminding.
But I appreciate the board's support. I really do think it's something that.
Yeah, we're supportive of the position. We just want to be clear on,
Correct.
We want to
Exactly
get the
where we're going.
procedure right.
yeah.
And it's
yeah.
a little convoluted.
Like the lines on the organizational chart.
There you go.
I get
Yeah.
cross-eyed looking at it, so it's, I'm trying to clean it up. But there's no easy way, and we spent some considerable time on it, and we do have a draft. But we'll put it together and we'll get it accomplished.
All right, that brings us to board consent agenda items for curriculum.
Correct. The administration recommends the approval of curriculum items reflected in schedules G1 through G3.
Okay, need a motion and a second, please. Motion by Vice President Hayes, seconded by Trustee Kavanaugh for items G1 through 3.
Yep.
Any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hands. Seeing all hands raised, the motion passes unanimously. That brings us to the board consent agenda item for personnel.
The administration recommends approval of personnel changes reflected in schedules H1 through H7.
So when this isn't written out, I have to open it and look at it. Okay, H1
through H7.
through H7. No, I have it, thank you
Just
so
give me
much.
1 second.
Correct.
And there was an updated version today, so if you,
Okay, that I did not see.
all right, but in board docs, it should be
in there.
correct.
Yep.
You should have the updated version in board docs. All right. Give everyone a moment to look at that. Can I
Is
get a,
the updated portion, is it what is highlighted, or? No, 'cause I
Yes.
printed out, it is what's highlighted.
What was highlighted is what's updated, right?
Yes.
It's always.
yeah, there's 3 items. All right. We get a motion for H1 through H7 while we are still looking. Motion and a second, please. Anybody? Trustee Trent, seconded by Trustee Kavanaugh, thank you. All right, as you're looking at it, do you have any questions? Good? All good? All right. All those in favor of items H1 through H7, please raise your hands. Thank you, please put them down. And Seeing all hands raised, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, board consent agenda item for business.
The administration recommends approval of business items reflected in schedules I-1 through I-3.
Okay, need a motion and a second for I-1 through I-3. Motion and a second. Motion by trustee Hayes, seconded by trustee Barry. Any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Seeing all hands raised, the motion passes unanimously. That brings us to item J, public commentary for non-agenda or actually any agenda item. We have one card that we received from Kathleen, is it Antonucci?
Antonacci.
I'm sorry?
Antonacci.
Antonacci, who is a district resident, and you can approach the podium. Let me just check with the clerk. She'll set the timer for 3 minutes. You're all set?
I don't know if it's gonna show.
We just have to get the superintendent. There we go. Okay, welcome and thank you.
Hi. I just had a question about have all the pre-COVID programs reopened? So everything the district had been offering at one point, have they reopened in terms of anything from academics to after-school clubs and things of that nature? And then my other question relating to the new positions that were just discussed. I happen to know that the middle school hasn't fulfilled all of their content area extra help positions, just because I've been researching that for my own son.
So you
So I
said the
just-
middle school?
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that was still something that was kind of being looked at and making sure that, you know, after COVID, was all, no matter what stage in your academic life you were at, you took a hit, and I think it's really important to make sure we're still entertaining the idea of extra help for all subject areas and all stages.
Can I ask a question for clarification? What do you mean by extra help? Is teacher provided extra help?
After school, I mean, they have it for some of the subject areas, but not for all of the subject areas.
And that's what I was going to ask, if you could, and we'll have perhaps somebody from your office.
I'll follow up with you. I'll give
Okay.
you a call. It'll be my pleasure. But to answer your initial question, typically it's not an answer, Q&A sessions, it's more of a public question.
Oh,
But I did speak to the COVID, your first question.
Mhm.
There are no restrictions currently. There's guidance and suggestions to keep yourself safe. But as of now, there are no restrictions mandated by the state. We're operating as normal. All of our programs are running. There's nothing that has not happened because of COVID, except for me missing 3 days or being here in the office.
Yeah, I just know, like, I just wanted to make sure, like, vocational things, academic things, and social things were all open for the kids.
Yeah,
Okay.
aside from the anxiety associated with
Yeah,
COVID,
I know.
we're operating as normal.
Okay.
And I wanted to apologize, I didn't read the guidelines so that you would know what you were up against,
No, not
facing.
your fault.
Exactly. But if you have specifics, if you could jot them down to send them to the superintendent's office, then he can have someone or himself best advise you as to what your true questions are. But we do encourage you to come to the Board of Education to state those questions. And like the superintendent said, it's not typical for question and answer at the board meeting.
Gotcha.
But then we take your information and then we have someone follow up with you so that you can get the full answers
Okay.
to the concerns that you have.
Yep.
And we do appreciate that you brought them to our
Okay.
attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll give you a call tomorrow.
Okay, thanks.
All right. And- All right. All right, that brings us to closing remarks by board members. Does anyone have any additional closing remarks? Okay. Just want to remind Board of Education members, the committee meetings are so important. The Energia was presented at the Facility and Finance Committee meeting, and so our next round of committee meetings are coming up. It's going to be here quick in February. So if you cannot make a meeting, let either myself or Vice President Hayes knows, because we try to do a tag team to make sure one of us is available at each of those committee meetings, so that if you can't be there, that we have a representative there. And so far, we've had a Board of Education member at each and every meeting. But a lot of work gets done there, and I really give the committee and our 3 assistant superintendents credit for all the work that they do on those committees between our board meetings. So we'll remind you at the next meeting of the February meeting.
Yes, I do have 2 things.
Go right ahead.
The first one is, Mr. Santana, can you include Energia's PowerPoint in the update tomorrow?
Yep.
Because I don't recall receiving that. And then, to that point about attendance to the committees, I get out of work at 4:30 and get in Bellport around 5 o'clock. So I'm gonna miss 30 minutes of all of my committee meetings. So, I just want to ask if the board would consider moving all of the committee meetings back, a further time, so.
This has been discussed, right? It was brought up by a speaker a couple of weeks ago.
I don't believe we ever talked about it.
No, what happened with the committees is the committees reached out to people on the committee, and if 4:30 worked for that committee,
Okay.
it left to 4:30. If it didn't, it was moved to 5:30. So work with the district clerk on your committees, and then the assistant superintendents, so that we can make accommodations if accommodations are needed. All
Going
right?
forward, though, maybe it's next school year. Meetings like that need to be a little bit later.
For 5:30.
5:30 is too early.
That's all right.
It's early. I mean, some people commute home, right? I mean,
Are you having
I have
difficulty getting to the 5:30
extreme
meetings,
difficulty.
too?
he works in Nassau
Okay.
County, he gets off at 5, he's not
Okay.
getting till 6:30. So it prevents people from being able to participate, specifically community members, if it's done,
If there was Zoom available, that would help a little bit, but, it's the traffic.
All right, you know what, could you let Sarah know to add this discussion to the next agenda meeting for the president, vice president, and the superintendent?
President, please, I can take care of that.
You shouldn't have to.
It's okay.
That's why we have
I
a
take my
clerk
notes,
here.
of course.
Okay?
I try to ease the burden of this flow
That's
there.
okay, that's okay. That's okay. She doesn't mind, she does a great job. All right. All right, any other comments about closing remarks? All right, thanks, everybody. That brings us to, we need a motion to adjourn. Motion by trustee Trent, seconded by trustee Barry. All those in favor? We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.